think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the founding fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Hey folks, welcome to the program this morning. Thank you so much for starting the beginning of your day with us here, the intersection of conservative ideas and reality, where we are building a liberty machine. Telephone number 870-275-9799. You can call or text that number. Sound off. Broadcasting across the state of Arkansas. Very grateful for the radio stations carrying the program, as well as over on the YouTube page. We would love for you to subscribe to Conduit News. Click the little bell to receive notifications. But over on the Facebook page, it seems to be where there's a growing community. Who knows, how long Facebook is going to continue to be a thing. But as of right now, it is a great way to communicate. That's why the Silicon Valley tech giants are trying to censor you on Facebook, because it is such an effective means of communicating political points that the Silicon Valley people, well, they can't refute. So they just don't want you to say what you're saying, and so they want to try to silence you, which is, that's a whole other topic of conversation. But that's at facebook.com/Conduit News. If you want to check us out there, that's facebook.com/Conduit News. Okay, so got a big show for you today. Coming up at the bottom of this hour, we'll be talking with the Remembrance Project's Maria Espinosa. It's always great to have her on the program. Then at 7:33, the Young America Foundation. That's right, the Young America Foundation spokesman Spencer Brown. Can you say spokesman? Can you say spokesman? We will. Spokesperson? I'll ask him about it, because apparently the top 4 truths that are going to get you banned from a college campus, one of the number one bullet point, to pretend that a man is a woman if he believes he is a woman, is objectively untrue. If you say that statement, according to Ben Shapiro, you will get kicked off a college campus, and so we'll have him to talk about this. Matter of fact, cue up this YouTube video, Joe. This is Spencer Brown. Actually, he's going to be talking a little bit about this incident, which was on the campus of University of Missouri, Kansas City. Michael Knowles was attacked with some milk. So just real quick, we'll play about 15 seconds of this video. Michael Knowles was attacked with some milk. Go ahead. Do what?
There's a course being taught right now at an American university on angry white men. And when I look at who's angry, I'm not so sure.
All right, stop.
I know, I seem...
So eventually, it's just, Young America Foundation, they go around, they give these talks on college campuses, and then, sometimes, it just kind of goes back to the Facebook thing. They want to silence. They don't want to engage because, and I hate to say this because I know this sounds so elitist in a way, but it's the truth. They're not winning in the arena of ideas, so they go to the more... basic human instincts. It's more like a toddler situation where you just, go to these baseless emotions, you throw a temper tantrum and that sort of thing. I have a toddler at home, and it's actually, although, one thing I noticed about my toddler, and this kind of goes to our graphic this week that we have up right now, which is a big white elephant with the word legisplain on it, which is all of the legisplating that's going to be done here in Arkansas about how the Republican supermajority legislature is now taking more money from you after their session than less. But that's a whole nother topic. But I was talking with somebody the other day about how my toddler is more skeptical of me when I tell her something than some of these legislators are when they're told something from leadership. When they're told something from the big government establishment leadership, they're like, okay, all right, and they just buy it, believe it, hook, line, and sinker. But like if I go to my toddler, for example, last night, my toddler, I put her to bed sometimes, right? And she obviously would rather go to bed with Mom. She would rather Mom put her to bed. Okay, I get that. But sometimes, I gotta do this. Number one, I want to. Number two, it gives my wife a break and makes the home a little easier to live in. So the situation is, though, I'll sometimes Mom's gonna put her to bed, and I will say, hey, what if we go into the back and I get your pajamas on, but Mom's still gonna read books and put you to bed, okay? She is so skeptical of going back because she doesn't really want me to put her to bed. She wants Mom to put her to bed. And so I've got a toddler that's more skeptical than some of these legislators. When they get told something from the higher-ups, they just, okay, completely believe it, completely. I have a toddler that's more skeptical than some of you. The telephone number, 870-275-9799, is the telephone number. So we've got a great show for you, obviously. Now, let's start with the top headline of the day. Well, at least according to me, is the fact that Rod Rosenstein, the Deputy Attorney General, has decided to submit his letter of resignation. He's resigning. He's out. Now, there was a lot of people that thought during the Barr press conference recently when he was releasing the Mueller report, going over the Mueller report, Rod Rosenstein right there. I thought that was a big deal because the left put out there that Rod Rosenstein was their boy. Rod Rosenstein was not going to allow Donald Trump to get away with anything. He wasn't going to allow Mueller's investigation to be compromised. Matter of fact, just a quick search, just Google Rosenstein red line, and you'll find articles like this. CNN from 2018, April 2018. Joe, throw this up there. Firing Rosenstein would cross a red line. Firing Rosenstein would cross a red line for the rule of law. CNN article by Fred Werthemeyer and Norm Eason. Okay, that's just one of them. Okay, then we have another one. The plan from act.moveon.org, right? They had this plan they wanted to take to the streets. Here are the actions of Donald Trump, the actions that Donald Trump could take that would set these protests in motion. Number one, firing Mueller, pardons of key witnesses, actions that would prevent the investigation from being conducted freely. Okay, that's just one. Then we go to this other one, act.invisible.org. Tell your member of Congress, take immediate action if Trump fires Rosenstein. They thought Rosenstein was the gatekeeper. He was keeping the investigation honest. And then when Rosenstein all of a sudden says, you know what? He's defending AG Barr. He's saying the investigation was handled properly. He's saying that they don't agree with some of Mueller's, what would you call it, legal theories. Now all of a sudden people are upset at Mueller and they're really upset at Rosenstein. It's like, hang on a second. This was your boy. He, by the way, the deep state is real, clearly. But but he was supposed to be the guy that was driving this forward. He was protecting it. And now that he has come out and essentially sided with William Barr, all of a sudden he's the bad guy. All of a sudden Mueller's the bad guy. And they're blaming Mueller. Bill Maher, Real Time with Bill Maher, he was very, very critical. So Rush Limbaugh, a guy who essentially, makes the guy who's a pioneer, Rush Limbaugh, obviously, talk radio legend. I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Rush Limbaugh and all the work he did, making talk radio a format, and now, of course, it's digital and everything else. And I think, the whole podcast format that you're seeing now, by the way, is you can attribute that to Rush. This idea that the spoken word is actually something that people are just going to continue to listen to, that it's entertaining. He had a lot to do with where we are now when it comes to political talk radio. Everything to do with it, in fact. Rush is saying this back on last week, April 26. Rush Limbaugh, could Rosenstein be on the side of the angels now? Talking about that he had a caller. It was early last week. Rush, did you notice that Rosenstein was standing behind Bill Barr when Barr said that their Mueller report found no collusion and no obstruction? I said, yeah, I saw Rosenstein. Well, I think Barr has kept Rosenstein on because I think the caller's right. I think Rosenstein is unloading on all these people. Rosenstein knows what Strzok, Smirk, and Page did in McCabe. He knows what all these FBI shills did. He knows what everybody was doing to try to run this coup, and I'll bet you he's unloading. I'll bet Barr has given him all kinds of grace periods and exonerations and promises that nothing will happen to him if he just hangs around and unloads. Now, there is no question that Rod Rosenstein definitely knows everything that was going on, knows what was, he's recently come out. Rosenstein has been critical of James Comey, critical of the Obama administration, rather, and how they handled the Russian attempts by Russia to, tweak with our elections or whatever, tweak, whatever. I don't know. It's just, obviously that the Russians are always going to, and they always have attempted to mess with our elections. So, interestingly enough, if you've been following Sarah Carter, if you've been following Mark Levin, and the interview that Mark Levin did with Sarah Carter and John Solomon, where both of these reporters detail, this was on national television, and both of these reporters are detailing to you that they were approached by members of the intelligence community telling them about, saying, keep digging, there's all this FISA abuse. Well, why are you telling us this? Well, because we actually need to use these tools to catch terrorists, and because it has been politicized, we're not going to have these tools, and America is going to be less safe. And so that's what started all of these investigations by Sarah Carter and John Solomon, was actually members of the intelligence community going to them, according to them. And that's fascinating to me. So let's act, and so this, and that has uncovered all of this. This attempted coup, this an attempt to nullify the 2016 election, to nullify the voices of people that chose Donald Trump over Hillary Clinton, the votes of people. So let's go to Rod Rosenstein's letter of resignation, shall we? Because this, to me, is extremely telling. Okay, he starts out by saying, the Department of Justice made rapid progress in achieving the administration's law enforcement priorities, reducing violent crime, curtailing opioid abuse, protecting consumers, improving immigration enforcement, building confidence in the police, while preserving national security and strengthening federal efforts in other areas. We staffed the Department of Justice and U.S. Attorney's offices with skilled and principled leaders devoted to the values that make America great by consulting stakeholders, implementing constructive policies, reducing bureaucracy. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Second paragraph. Our nation is safer, our elections are more secure, and our citizens are better informed about covert foreign influence efforts and schemes to commit fraud, steal intellectual property, and launch cyber attacks. We also pursued illegal leaks. Skipping down, as Thomas Paine wrote, those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must undergo the fatigues of supporting it. That's an odd statement from Rod Rosenstein, isn't it? Now, listen, I know Rod Rosenstein's going to put forth, much like he did in congressional testimony that was very frustrating. I believe him and Jim Jordan had some words, that he's this Boy Scout. Jim Comey was really good at pretending that he was some Boy Scout. But Thomas Paine, really? In your letter of resignation, you're going to quote Thomas Paine? Those who expect to reap the blessings of freedom must undergo the fatigues of supporting it. I completely agree with that. I agree with Thomas Paine, but that's odd, isn't it? Well, let's see if there are any more quotes in Rod Rosenstein's resignation letter. And again, when you read this resignation letter from Rod Rosenstein, I want you to imagine Rosenstein behind William Barr at that press conference. Many people thought and I have to agree. I was watching Rod Rosenstein because I thought it was amazing that he was there and he was essentially submitting to William Barr's opinion, and knowing that he was in with the enemy, apparent enemy, in terms of all of the things that we're finding out that they did for political reasons. Okay, and yet he's there and he kind of looked like a prisoner. Kind of did to me. Just my opinion. Okay, let's go to the second paragraph. The third paragraph. As I submit my resignation effective on May 11th, I am grateful to you for the opportunity to serve, for the courtesy and humor you often display in our personal conversations, and for the goals you set in your inaugural address, patriotism, unify, safety, education, and prosperity. Because a nation exists to serve its citizens. The Department of Justice pursues those goals while operating in accordance with the rule of law. The rule of law is the foundation of America. It secures our freedom, allows our citizens to flourish, and enables our nation to serve as a model of liberty and justice for all. Again, this is Rod Rosenstein's resignation letter. At the Department of Justice, we stand watch over what Attorney General Robert Jackson called, quote, the inner ramparts of our society, the Constitution. It guarantees our freedoms and the supremacy of law, end quote. Okay, another quote from another historical figure. So who was Attorney General Robert Jackson? Well, you got to go back to Harry S. Truman. You got to go back to the Nuremberg trials. War crimes. Where, I mean, I would assume most people would say that this is probably one of the things that he's most known for. And I'm not somebody that was like, oh, Robert Jackson, I know who he is. No, I had to go look the guy up. I didn't know who he was. The Nuremberg trials, opening address for the United States, Attorney General Robert Jackson, quote, the privilege of opening the first trial in history for crimes against the peace of the world imposes a grave responsibility. The wrongs which we seek to condemn and punish have been so calculated, so malignant, and so devastating that civilization cannot tolerate their being ignored because it cannot survive their being repeated. End quote. Interesting. I mean, obviously that quote wasn't in, I'm not suggesting it was in Rosenstein's letter. It's not. It's just interesting to me. Is it interesting to you? Let me know. There's another quote in there too from, let's say we're out of time this segment, but there's another quote in there as well from, I can't find it now. But Thomas Paine, Robert Jackson, and one other actually. But anyway, so just check this out. Let me know what you think. What do you think out there about all of this? Rosenstein, how do you think he looked at that press conference? And then you compare that with the left. I mean, obviously, we know that the media, they push narratives. The media has their set-apart pundits and people in government that they put out there as being somehow, they're the moral standard of the day, and they're ever-rotating altruism. It's odd. I mean, again, Google Rosenstein red line, and you'll find all these articles. If you fire Rosenstein, that's the red line. You better not fire Rosenstein. He's keeping the investigation honest. He doesn't fire Rosenstein. Rosenstein's behind William Barr, and now Rosenstein is resigning. And you have people, again, Rush Limbaugh, he was talking about how, or entertaining the thought, I guess, of whether or not Rosenstein realizes that the whole situation is going to be exposed. We have the FISA warrant applications. Trump said he's going to declassify many, many times. You have the Steele dossier. Is Rosenstein saying, if Rosenstein handed over, quote, evidence to Mueller to start the investigation, and the only thing in that folder was the Steele dossier, yeah, Rosenstein might be saying, you know what, I'm just going to tell you guys everything I know. We're going to take a break. 870-275-9799. Back in a minute.
It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Folks, it has recently come to light, I don't know if many of you know, but we have State Representative Dan Sullivan not going to be seeking re-election for his Senate District 53 seat. Instead, he's going to be seeking the Senate seat for that area and be challenging Senator John Cooper, from what it looks like, for that Senate seat, which to me is a long time coming. So it's got a lot of people wondering, okay, well, who's going to run for State Representative Dan Sullivan's current seat? And that person has announced his name is Bobby Long. Bobby is a city councilman from Jonesboro. And Bobby, this is not your first time on the program. This is your second or third. So welcome,
It is. Thank you very much, Paul. Matter of fact, you had my wife on the program.
Last week, yeah.
Last week, yeah, talking about the pregnancy resource center options on that. So, yeah.
Who's next to Zipline?
Me, and I'm really excited about this.
Sir, I'm sorry. The Zipline has a 350-pound weight limit, and frankly, I do not think it would be safe for you.
Oh, that's okay. I self-identify as 180 pounds, so it's cool.
Sir, that doesn't make any sense to me, and I'm afraid we can't let you ride the zip line. You're too heavy. I'm sorry.
I can't believe this. I thought we had evolved as a society. I thought this was America, but I guess this is just my plight. First slavery, and now fat shaming.
Sir, again, I'm really sorry.
You listen to me. If you don't let me ride, not only will I sue this company for discrimination, I will sue you for damages because right now my feelings are so hurt and I feel embarrassed because I'm holding up the line.
Wouldn't be the first time.
Watch it, mister.
Look, okay, I'm sorry. I just don't think it would be safe for you.
You don't understand. I self-identify as skinny. So you have to let me ride the zip line. The Constitution says so. I get to define my own reality.
Oh, you know what? Okay, fine. Whatever. Ride the zip line. Mike, let this man ride the zip line.
Thank you. Now watch as my self-identity trumps your bigotry. See you on the other side, racist. Here I go! Doctor, thank goodness. What's the prognosis?
Sir, we've done everything we can, and you only have seconds to live.
No, you cannot say that. I do not self-identify as a dead person.
PHP Parody. Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so, pretty short. Yeah, we got to go with some more Paul Harrell parodies. One of them, I can't, I'm sorry, one of them I think is going to have to be, let me explain something to you. Listen, I know that you feel like that, you may have heard that, we cut taxes here and raised them over here and raised them much more than we cut them, and I know you feel like that. But let me explain that to you. We're so proud to be able to cut taxes in one area of the government and give you the money back that we're letting you keep. Let me explain. I know it sounds bad. I know what you've heard and I know what you're feeling in your pocketbooks, but let me explain what the legislation actually says versus what you're hearing it says. Oh, by the way, the other person quoted in Rod Rosenstein's resignation letter is Edward Levy. Urged us to, quote, facing corrosive skepticism and cynicism concerning the administration of justice. In 1975, Edward Levy, who is, scholar, statesman, I think at the University of Chicago, urged us to make clear by word and deed that our law is not an instrument of partisan purpose, and it is not to be used in ways which are careless of the higher values within us all. And then they also quote, I thought that was interesting, then they also quote John Ashcroft in 2001. John Ashcroft called for a professional Justice Department free from politics, uncompromisingly fair, defined by integrity, and dedicated to upholding the law. I think that last quote is a shot at James Comey. I think Rosenstein, this is a shot. If you follow, I'm telling you, the first time I ever heard of James Comey was when James Comey was talking about how President George W. Bush and Alberto Gonzales were John Ashcroft was, very, very ill, and there was one provision of the Patriot Act that was supposed to expire. And so Chuck Schumer and James Comey, they go before, and Comey is basically ratting on George W. Bush, which is fine. I from a constitutional standpoint, I was like, yay, James Comey, you're a Boy Scout. The Fourth Amendment means something, right? That's what I was saying. I was like, they tried to do what to John Ashcroft? They tried to take advantage of John Ashcroft when he was very sick. People thought he was on his deathbed, but we need you. But James Comey told Chuck Schumer in that committee, this was a long time ago, he said, no, but I researched it, and I wrote opinions to the Attorney General, and I said that this is wrong, that we can't have this as Fourth Amendment violations. And now we have the obviously corrupt James Comey. Rod Rosenstein in his resignation letter is quoting John Ashcroft. I find that interesting. Yeah, Valerie,
exciting.
That's a great interview, and by the way, that was totally a coincidence. That wasn't planned or anything like that. That just seemed to be the way things happen.
Yeah.
So, Bobby, why do you want to run? Why do you want to run for the seat?
Well, as I said in the article that appeared in the Jonesboro Sun Sunday, when I was young, my parents exhibited leadership, both in the community and in the church. So I grew up saying, you know what, if you want to change things, or if you want to be a positive force for your area, then you lead and you serve other people. So I grew up with that mentality. I was captain of our basketball team, so I led in that way. Matter of fact, I was the first graduating class of BIC. So
oh, wow.
Yeah, so we were able to lead that whole transition, and look where it is now. BIC is a great school, and but as I got older, I've always served in the churches, that no matter where we were, Birmingham, Alabama, Jackson, Tennessee, and now, when we moved back to Jonesboro, when we had our twin boys, I started in leadership there in our local church. I led worship at a local church here. And then the opportunity arose for me to have a greater impact and join city council. And so I didn't know what I was doing. I just knew that I was a Christian conservative at heart. Every one of us has a lens that we view the world and that we filter things through and our decisions through, and mine happens to be Christian conservatism. I'm a staunch and vocal follower of Jesus Christ. I have absolutely no qualms about that. People who know me hopefully can spend 5 minutes and understand that. That's how that my wife and I were married under that umbrella. We've raised our kids in that home, and we feel that is the epitome and just the foundation of our whole society. It's how God set that up to be the family unit. And so we have tried our best, to raise our kids in that atmosphere. And so I wanted to bring those values to city council. And let me tell you something, local politics matter. They really do. They impact a lot of people. So it wasn't a willy-nilly choice to do that. I prayed hard about that. First of all, for my family, because I wasn't, I didn't want to put them through a lot of the things that even local politics has. And we experienced that in both of my campaigns. But yet I feel that we took the high road on that, and we did not retaliate back, because those people that know me knew it wasn't true. Those people that didn't, that would believe the lie, that didn't ask me about it, they probably weren't going to vote for me anyway. So either way.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
The United States of America is projected to add 1.5 million illegal aliens to the population this year. This is from Breitbart.com. John Binder. Projected to add 1.5 million illegal aliens to the American population by the end of the year, should current rates of catch and release border crossings and visa overstays pan out. That is a gargantuan amount of people, and it's only getting worse. Here to talk more about this, we have the director of the Remembrance Project, which honors and remembers Americans and legal residents who have been killed by illegal aliens. Maria Espinosa is back with us. Maria, how are you?
I'm doing well, Paul. Thanks so much for having me on.
Absolutely. So is this ever going to stop? Is the catch and release policy ever going to stop, where people are saying the magic words, literally, so that they can get a court date and then they never show up?
Well, I certainly hope so. Over 95% of those who claim asylum here are fraudulent. So then we bring them into the interior, and we let them into our communities, and then we have to round them up. And they don't appear for the court date. It is insane. And again, I point back to the failed leadership of former Speaker Paul Ryan. We had the House, we had the Senate, and America First president, and here they did nothing. They sat on their hands for the last 2 years, and this is a result.
Yeah, this is the result. And, you know, of course, it's... How do you feel about the people that are out there saying that the border is not as serious as, the president makes it out to be? I mean, I personally think it is, but I mean, there still is this. What do we need to do to get over that gap to convince people that? I mean, this has been a problem for decades, and it just hasn't been given the attention. So the American people think it's all contrived, or not all of them, but some of them do.
Right. Well, you know, the Remembrance Project was created 10 years ago. So I've been at this for 10 years, Paul, and you know, all we were asking for and continue to ask for is for our laws to be enforced, to place the safety of Americans first, and to secure the borders as it, you know, is owed to us in our Constitution. But yet, you know, the government doesn't seem to want to do this, and this is not just the government; it's the people that we're electing. So we have to be more, I guess, concerned about those candidates who the establishment might be putting up, Paul, and be able to bring in our America First candidates. Just like Donald Trump, he put this country first, and that's what we need to gather, recruit, identify those, and support those in every way to run for Congress and run actually for every level of government, so that, you know, we come back to taking care of American families first. My goodness, we have enough of orphans, 500,000 orphans, American children who need adopting and to go to good homes and have a better life themselves. We have 13 million children who go to bed hungry. They live in poverty. And we have our vets that are not being taken care of. And here we're allowing our country to be invaded, and that's what it is. It's an invasion. And to eat up our resources, commit these chaos within our communities and commit crimes. So this is out of hand, but I think the key is to continue spreading the information and recruiting those, point them in the direction. You mentioned Breitbart, an article in Breitbart. You know, there are good outlets out there that are telling the truth. So we certainly have to wake up people, and I'm glad to see that the Latino community is waking up. You know, my goodness, now President Trump is enjoying at least 19 points within that Latino population in favor of his policies.
He that is a good sign. Also, certainly, I think historic approval, African American approval as well. We're talking with Maria Espinosa again. She's the national director of the Remembrance Project. I'm wondering, Maria, you know, do you think the Congress has a chance of going back to the Republican side, and could that aid, assuming that President Trump wins a second term, trying to tackle this issue, you know, at a later date? I know it continues to get worse, but a lot of those districts where the Democrats won to swing the power to the control of the Democrats of the House, they were moderate. They weren't these Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez districts. They were more moderate. So what do you think the chances are?
I certainly I haven't really looked at that closely, Paul, but I think that this is a good sign when we have more Latinos on board. And I've also spoken with a family member up in California where he lives in a highly Hispanic community, and there are illegals there as well. It's closer to the border, but he's talking about that the legal Hispanics are all on board now. There's a difference, he says, with this president. So I think as the information seeps into the communities and this crisis worsens, and they see how hard that President Trump is trying to work with the Democrats as well. They keep refusing anything that he puts together, any packages and policies that he puts together, and they refuse that. And it's a sign that they want complete open borders. They can see the craziness in AOC and Cortez and the rest of the new freshman congressmen. So I think they've probably done a pretty good job as well in bringing people back back to their senses.
And then you got crazy Bernie out there talking about how felons, rapists, and murderers need to have the right to vote. It's ridiculous. We haven't talked to you in a while, Maria. So here in my state of Arkansas, we recently passed one of the positive things that came out of our recent session was a sanctuary city law where we can now defund cities. The state can defund cities if they adopt sanctuary policies. There's no city in Arkansas that has, but a lot of people were thinking Little Rock was kind of going down that path. And so that was definitely a positive sign, and that was happening, I guess, a couple of days before you had this potential solution that was leaked or whatever the case may be, where Donald Trump was thinking about, or the Homeland Security was thinking about, busing a lot of these migrants to sanctuary cities and just dropping them off and saying, hey, you guys say you wanted them, so here you go. What did you think about that?
I love that. I know some people were not for that, but I love that because they asked for them. They said, all are welcome here. Come here, we'll protect them. They set up a slush fund to help these illegal aliens. In my opinion, if they come in here, Paul, with the fraudulent claim of asylum, then they're illegally in the country. They just haven't been exposed, and we're being quite naive if we think that all of these people are seeking asylum. And you take a look at them. I mean, they're carrying iPhones. They look like they haven't missed a meal, some of them, and they're wearing Nike shoes. I don't even have that. So I love the fact that President Trump is giving them what they wanted. As you know, that New York City Mayor de Blasio threatened to sue the government if that took place. So I love it. I mean, they get a taste of their own medicine, of the policies that they expect us, the rest of us, to live by, and they're pushing their far-left agenda policies, which is very wrong.
It certainly is. What do you think it would take to stop the catch and release program? Obviously, I think there's a lot of people legally that say, no, you've got to continue to allow them to apply for asylum if they say those magic words that they're told to say. But, somebody told me that there's maybe a plan to just set up massive tent cities and not allow them to be released.
Yes, I agree with that as well. I think they should do that and not bring them into the interior. We have to go back and round them up, and here, do not bring them into the interior where they can come into our communities and cause harm and commit other crimes. So those loopholes have to be closed. We have to demand that in the future they can only go through that process, not come up to the border anywhere and say, take me to your station, and I have credible fear, and here we bring them in and wait, 2, 3, 4, 5 years now. I think where the time is now has increased because there's so many cases until their court date is, until a court date arrives. But yes, there are so many things that we can do. Not give them benefits, number one. Not hire them. They're not supposed to be, illegal aliens are not supposed to be working here. And we have to mandate E-Verify all across the nation, but also ought to include those contractors, subcontractors, because that's how these illegal aliens are being hired. The IRS is giving illegal aliens ITIN numbers, the individual tax identification numbers, and by which they use to run a business. So there are things that we certainly can do that we're not doing. We just don't have the will in Congress to make that happen.
I recently, Maria, sat down and got to interview an angel dad, Steve Ronnebeck. He told me about his son, what happened in a convenience store. Uh-huh. I mean, it's just absolutely terrible. And so I want to, before we go, I want to make sure we highlight what the Remembrance Project is doing. And you guys are bringing to light what people don't want to admit, really, especially on the left, that these are preventable deaths. If we were able to control who was coming into this country, like a nation is supposed to do, then we have a lot of Americans that would be alive today.
Exactly. And we don't have that list either. My husband, Tim Lee, and I started the Remembrance Project 10 years ago, Paul. This is outrageous that we're still in business, but thank God that we are. And we brought the angel moms and dads and family members to then candidate Donald Trump in 2015. So we've been working very hard to raise awareness and educate. We have webinars for our families, webinars for our chapter leaders and surrogates, conference calls. Also, we have developed a CRM database because we realized after meeting with former Attorney General Jeff Sessions 2 years ago almost, we asked for these statistics of how many Americans were killed by illegal aliens, and AG Sessions said that it's impossible to obtain those statistics because the municipalities do not work with the federal government. As you can see, their sanctuary policies. President Trump also, as a promise to me and my organization, created the Office of Voice, Victims of Immigration Crime Engagement, to assist the families in finding out where this illegal alien is, the hearings, the detention centers. But, we want that office to do more because it was very key in the letter that I sent to Donald Trump that there be an office to set up to assist the families navigate through the court system because, in my opinion, we already saw the fact that these far-left judges, as you saw, the Massachusetts judge who assisted in the illegal alien escape,
yes,
he was just charged.
Saw that.
There's an Oregon judge, and that's fantastic. That is what should have been happening all along. Indicting those, charging those who aid and abet an illegal alien. And mayors, unfortunately, elected officials have administrative immunity, and that's outrageous when they're breaking our laws. And hopefully DOJ will go after the Oregon judge who did the same thing.
Yeah.
So this is what we do. We honor and remember Americans who've been killed by illegal aliens, and we do that on our Stolen Lives Quilt banners, which you saw on stage with Donald Trump and the mothers and fathers wearing the photos of the images of their loved ones on their T-shirts. And so we just want people to make aware of what's going on when laws are not enforced and borders not secured and Americans are not placed first and foremost in the hearts and minds of these elected officials.
Maria Espinosa, the director of the Remembrance Project. Go to theremembranceproject.org, folks, for more information. Maria, it's always great to have you on.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Paul. God bless you, and have a great day.
You too. Have a great day. Folks, one thing we didn't talk about, people on the Facebook page, the wall. Build the wall. Build the wall. Somebody writes, if the wall is built, the Democrat Party will never win another election again. You believe that? A lot of people think there's massive voter fraud going on. He's like, well, you have no proof that there's massive voter fraud going on. Well, you don't know what you don't know, just like we don't really know how many people are coming across the border where there's no wall. Well, most of those drugs are seized at the ports of entry. Well, that's preposterous. Yeah, we have people there that are monitoring and taking records. We don't have people taking records of how much fentanyl is coming across the parts without a fence.
Yeah, 90% of it's being contacted.
Yeah. Yeah, the ones that we know about. So it's the same thing with voter fraud, in my opinion. And anyway, I mean, if you're a state and you've issued a driver's license to an illegal alien, can we at least admit that the probability that they're going to be allowed to vote is increased a little bit? We got to take a break. Back in a minute.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
That umbrella, we've raised our kids in that home, and we feel that that is the epitome and just the foundation of our whole society. You know, it's how God set that up to be the family unit. And so we have tried our best, you know, to raise our kids in that atmosphere. And so I wanted to bring those values to City Council. And let me tell you something, local politics matter. They really do. They impact a lot of people. So it wasn't a willy-nilly choice to do that. I prayed hard about that. You know, first of all, you know, for my family, because I wasn't, you know, I didn't want to put them through a lot of the things that even local politics has. And we experienced that in both of my campaigns. But yet I feel that we took the high road on that and we did not retaliate back because those people that know me knew it wasn't true. Those people that didn't, that would believe the lie, that didn't ask me about it, they probably weren't going to vote for me anyway. So either way, I won.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So I know you've heard that people in Arkansas are going to be paying more money in taxes. But did you read the legislation? Let me explain it to you. Let me explain it to you, and then you'll understand and vote for me. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number if you would like to contribute to the program today. Charlottesville headline: Charlottesville judge rules that Lee Jackson, statues of these two men, are war memorials. That's right. A judge has ruled that the Confederate statues, trigger warning, in downtown Charlottesville are officially protected under state law. Charlottesville, Virginia. Judge Richard didn't pull the statues down. Hey, remember when they pulled those statues down and you had those young kids, they were kicking the statues and making themselves feel better, and that one girl, pretty sure she broke her foot. And then they were like, you know, doing pile drive or something, like it was wrestling. They treat these, they treat these, where they pull down a Confederate statue, then they mob it and they kick it and everything. They treat these statues like they're wrestling buddies. Who out there remembers wrestling buddies? Joe, you don't, because you're a baby. Compared to me, you don't remember wrestling buddies. I'm 10 years older than you. So who here remembers wrestling buddies? I do. Remember? They were just basically like Hulk Hogan. They were about like this big, and they were basically pillows that you would practice wrestling moves on, Anyway, that's what they do. That's what they do to these statues when they finally pull them down, these radical leftists. Anyway, Judge Richard Moore ruled that the statues of Robert E. Lee and Thomas Stonewall Jackson are war memorials and therefore cannot be removed by the city without permission from the state. All of this stems from a lawsuit against both current and former city councilors who voted to remove those two Confederate statues back in 2017. Yesterday, one of the men who advocated for the relocation of the statues is weighing in on Judge Moore's decision. Quote, "I absolutely disagree with it." Dan Gathers, a community activist. Dan gathered statues. "It's painful because all it does is re-traumatize the community once again. If we could only remove these statues, we would end disagreements." That's what I keep saying. If you would only change the star on the Arkansas flag, and instead of it representing the Confederacy, if we would only change it to something else, we would end political disagreements. We would end racism, in fact. Racism would end if we could somehow edit it out of our history. Huh. That's funny how that works. Gathers, who is the former chair of the Blue Ribbon Commission that advised Charlottesville city councilors to relocate two downtown Confederate statues, disagrees with Judge Moore's ruling that these depictions of Lee and Jackson are war memorials. Quote, "Just because something is legal doesn't mean it's right or it's moral, and I'm fearful." Yeah. Hello, McFly. Yeah, abortion. Yeah, just because something's legal doesn't mean it's right or it's moral. And I'm fearful that what this has done is given the vile evilness that descended upon us in August of 2017 to come back. Well, obviously we know what happened in Charlottesville. We know it was evil. This is going to be very, very interesting. Oh, and by the way, I think it's interesting that you start out. I immediately tie it to abortion because I tie the Democrat Party to abortion, just like I tie the Democrat Party to assigning a life of value based on the color of their skin, because historically that's what the Democratic Party has done. Okay, so the party of slavery is essentially the Democrat Party. They were the party of slavery. They were advocating for it, and the Democrat Party. You look at Dred Scott. It was, listen, you're not a citizen because of the color of your skin. It's just an arbitrary line, right? We reject that now. We think it's morally repugnant now. We say, oh, no, you've got to take down the statues that remind us that the Democrat Party was the party of slavery. We got to take them down now. Will we ever think of abortion in the same way? Because the Democrat Party is still in favor of drawing arbitrary lines and deciding who's a person under the Constitution and our laws and who's not. Baby inside the mother's womb, not a person. Baby outside the mother's womb, still not a person until the mother decides that she wants to continue. The North Carolina governor, right? Well, we would make him comfortable, and then we would make a decision on whether or not to kill the baby or not. Now, he stopped, well, then we would make a decision. What are you talking about? Talk about just because something's legal. Of course, in that case, that would be illegal. Just because something's legal doesn't make it moral or right. Yeah, you're telling me, pal, preaching to the choir here. You want to be morally outraged at a statue? We've got one more hour coming your way next this morning. Thanks for starting the beginning of your day with us here at the intersection of conservative ideas and reality. We got a great next hour for you. We're going to be talking with the Young America's Foundation, Spencer Brown, who has worked to bring conservative speakers to universities across the country, including Ben Shapiro at UC Berkeley, Michael Knowles at University of Missouri, Kansas City, and he has witnessed all the insanity. And we're going to talk about the four truths, true statements that will get you kicked off a college campus. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News. Back in a minute.
talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
And that's how I'm going to go. I've always tried to live my life with integrity and with value.
Yeah.
And so I tried to bring those to City Council. One thing that I promised that I would do, and I think that I've done that up to this point, is I won't do something that I said I'm not going to do. Well, I will do those things that I said I will do. I will not do those things I say I will not do.
Yes.
And that's what I brought to City Council, and that's how I've tried to vote. And I've been vocal. Sometimes I've been the only no vote, and I'm okay with that. Because at the end of the day, when this whole thing is over, I want to be able to lay my head down on my pillow and say, I did what I said I was going to do.
Yeah.
You know, and
that's
how
important.
I would do that.
That's very important this day and age, because we've seen this time and time again where, that doesn't happen. A lot of times politicians, they're human, they're caving to the pressure. Everybody is asking them when they get to an office, a lot of times they're getting bombarded with people asking them to do the thing that they told their voters that they wouldn't do, which is really an odd phenomenon, but that happens all the time. And you got to be able to stand up to it, and it's a hard thing to do. We're talking with Bobby Long. He's a city councilman from Jonesboro. He's announcing that he's running for District 53, which will be, the election will be in 2020. So Bobby, what's your views on government in terms of, are you a limited government guy? What are your philosophy there?
My philosophy is those powers that were not expressly given to the federal government should remain with the states or at the local government. I feel that the closer you can get policy formation to the people that it actually impacts, the better off you're going to be. So the smaller government can be, the better off. I think you even have a statistic that even around our surrounding states, our cost per person to run our government is astronomical.
It's close to $8,000 a person.
$8,000 a person.
Yeah.
There's some around our states at around 6.
Yeah, 4 or 5.
4 or 5.
You take Texas out, it's 5. You put Texas in, I think it's 4.
Yeah, so I believe that there are efficiencies that we can create in government, not just consolidate, the number of departments, but when the size of government actually doesn't shrink, you just consolidate departments. That's not shrinking government. Shrinking government isn't raising your taxes and then taking back some of the tax, increases that you're going to say and call it a tax cut. Those aren't tax cuts.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm a limited government guy. I'm a small government guy. I think that the closer we can get policy formation to those people that it impact, the better off we're going to be.
So let's talk about Second Amendment. I mean, this is an issue that's very important to a lot of people around here. So, what are your views on that?
Oh yes, I think Arkansas, with the constitutional carry, is the way it needs to go. I tell you what, anytime, you have a right that's not given by man. You have a right that's given by God. If it was something that was given to me, it's not a right, it's a privilege. And that right to carry a firearm, is fundamental to who we are as a nation. And it's not for hunting or duck hunting or deer hunting. It's to provide a defense against an overreaching government. And when you deny people the right to that, I think that you're infringing on a constitutional right that is for all people.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And you specifically mentioned constitutional carry. I find that to be, that to me just shows you that you're up on the issues, because Arkansas is a constitutional carry state, and some people don't want to acknowledge it, but we are.
Yeah, let me tell you something. It was refreshing. Yesterday, I went to the Patriots.
Saturday.
The Patriots of Act 746, and I tell you what, that was the safest room in Paragould. Yeah. It was probably the safest room in Northeast Arkansas. I did not feel intimidated. I did not feel uncomfortable at all. And probably 99% of those people were carrying, and probably a large portion of them were carrying 2 weapons.
Yeah. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm glad you went to that meeting, because
it was great.
Yeah. Well, they certainly have been on the forefront, and they've been proven right about what the law actually says, and so it's really, really good. And obviously, I mean, we don't even really have to cover the life issue, but it is my number one issue, even though it's a low hanging.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
I got our second cup of coffee. So, here's the thing. The reason, if you're watching the live stream, okay, the reason I kind of looked exhausted there is because I saw the next headline in the queue, and it just makes me very frustrated. And listen, I know. Let me preface this next segment by saying that. Listen, I understand that the United States is going to trade and do business with countries that have bad human rights violations that don't necessarily adhere to our values as Americans, and that's just part of the living. That's part of part of living in this world, right? People have different ideas. That's why you have a border, right? Because that border is actually representing an idea, right? No better example of that than North Korea, or Korean Peninsula, rather. The Korean Peninsula at nighttime is really, really indicative of what a border should mean, or what a border does mean, ideas. Of course, we hope that President Trump administration is successful in negotiating with North Korea, really just for humanity, for the amount of lives that are at stake. But I get to this next segment, and listen, everybody knows that I'm... Personally, I'm against corporate welfare. I can't stand it. I can't stand it when they call this economic development, giving away all this money to private companies, with the hopes that one day in the future they're going to create X amount of jobs. Don't worry, we'll have clawback features. Not really. Clawback features in these economic development loans, tax incentives are more like a sunset clause, a tax increase having a sunset. Because we know that's not going to happen. We know you're not going to let it sunset, as evidenced by what happened over the last 90 days in the Arkansas General Assembly, where they're now asking you to vote to make sure you really wanted that half-cent sales tax to sunset. Let me explain something to you. You just don't understand. I know you feel like we've taken more of your money, but you got to let me explain the legislation to you. Okay. So I don't like economic development in the terms of how they define it, which is just giving away money to private corporations, using an Arkansans' tax dollars that they're paying right now to recruit a business to come in here and that then can steal their labor away from them at a subsidized rate. That's not fair. And that's not a job that's created. When one person goes from being employed over here by an Arkansas business to go to the subsidized new, quote, Arkansas, end quote, business, that's not a job created. A job created is somebody who's on the couch right now that's going to get in the job. That's a job created. But they count, what I just said is that, well, we created a job. It's preposterous. But listen, I get it. I'm probably going to lose this argument because every state does these corporate welfare incentives. So I'm okay with that. I'm okay with accepting the fact that they're probably always going to do this, even though it doesn't work. according to some studies. So if we're going to do it, and we're going to have corporate welfare, I think we should have some say in who we do business with, meaning who are we going to give Arkansas taxpayer dollars to, and what kind of companies are coming in, and shouldn't we at least try to make them American companies? Or shouldn't we at least try to maybe not do business with the communist Chinese? The governor of this state, Asa Hutchinson, has several communist Chinese deals in the pipeline, and they're on hold right now because of the trade wars with China, which I'm thankful for. Because I don't believe that we should allow these are not private companies, okay? These are not private companies. They're communist companies. They are loyal to the Chinese government. They are the Chinese government. These are not private companies that the governor's trying to bring in here. They are loyal, and they are foreign national governments. Might as well think of these companies as little embassies. Why we don't need Chinese embassies in Arkansas disguised as companies. And that's what they are. That's why the FBI and CIA has investigations in all 50 states. That's why they're stealing our rice technology, as we had those men that were indicted down in Stuttgart, Arkansas, for stealing rice technology. They're stealing intellectual property all over the country. Can you imagine if we were doing this with Russian companies? If we were doing this with Russia companies, Vladimir Putin, but for some reason, and some people think it's because the Chinese have bought our politicians, for some reason it's okay to do it with China. And I don't know if the left is okay with it because China is still, the Soviet Union is over, right? They collapsed, they failed, and so they're kind of illegitimate now because it's our chalkboard Marxist utopia didn't quite work out. But Mao is still going strong. We got Mao's revolution over there still going strong. I don't know. That's just a speculation. I don't know why there's a double standard there. But I don't understand why. Listen, I know you do business. I know you trade like we do. We trade with Saudi Arabia. But would we want Saudi Arabia coming in here? Just like I don't like Saudi Arabia gave $100 billion to the University of Arkansas, the country that's the largest exporter of Wahhabism in the entire world, which is a radical form of, terrorism. I don't want that either, okay? But yeah, I understand you got to, you do some sort of business. I understand, we gave them arms, and that's much more complicated geopolitical stuff. But when it comes to, if we were saying, hey, we want a Saudi Arabian company coming here and, we're going to give them all this money, I think people have a problem with it. If Russia, but with China, no one has a problem with it. Now, I think that's changing. I think more and more people are waking up to the fact that we don't want Arkadelphia to become the new Beijing or, Chinadelphia. Chinadelphia is the parody that we did. So, all that being said, this next article, it really frustrated me at the thought that these deals are going to continue to be pursued by the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, a commission that hopefully one day won't even exist because we'll treat all businesses the same, and we'll literally put a sign, on Arkansas's borders that says "open for business." We'll just eliminate the corporate tax entirely to be competitive with our surrounding states, instead of keeping the corporate tax and then essentially being able to say, well, corporate tax, we'll give you an incentive. And what if a business can be recruited to a state, it can be recruited out of a state. People forget that. And we're trying to play incentive games with states that are much more, have larger populations and are much more successful than we are from a GDP standpoint. Okay, so here we go. Frank Lockwood, Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, worship freedom denied. Despite decades of efforts to combat it, religious persecution continues to be a widespread problem, according to the U.S. Commission on International Religious Freedom. So yeah, specifically, I'm thinking of what China is doing, not just to Christians, but apparently, according to this article, to anybody that believes in a higher power, because the fact is, if you're a statist, and you believe, and your people are starting to believe in a higher power and confessing that they think there's something more, larger, bigger, higher than the state, they can't tolerate that. You can't tolerate that. there's a big difference. I mean, America is a rare exception just in that fact alone. I mean, we founded our country out of humility, just because we recognized, hey, there's a creator that's bigger than us, and that's what gives us our rights. In order to protect those rights, we're going to create a government that's going to count on the fallibility, fallen nature of man. And we're going to understand that, yeah, there's some things the government needs to do, but we're going to make those small and defined, knowing that if it gets out of that, human beings are going to be human beings, so they're going to try to use that power of government to enslave or oppress the people of that government. And so because of that, and really in the context of everything we know about what's happening with the DOJ and FISA and what Comey, Strzok, Page, all these guys did, McCabe, that really rings true, right, about what we've allowed the government to grow to, the size and what it's capable of doing. I mean, from a human being standpoint, the question isn't, why would you use the intelligence apparatus to spy on Donald Trump? From a human being standpoint, with the kind of technology we have now, the question is, why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you use it? So, anyway, a communist state can't tolerate a widespread belief in God or higher power. 16 countries with systemic, ongoing, and egregious religious persecution include... Can we throw this article up there, Joe? 16 countries with systemic, ongoing, and egregious religious persecution include 10 already recognized as countries of particular concern by the U.S. State Department. China, number 1. On the list, China. Number 2, Pakistan. Pakistan. China, Pakistan, Iran, Sudan, Saudi Arabia, North Korea, Eritrea, Burma, plus 2 former Soviet states, Tajikistan and Turkmenistan. Some of those places I wouldn't be able to find on a map. I'm just going to be honest with you. The commission called on the State Department to add 6 more nations to the list: Russia, Nigeria, Vietnam, Syria, Uzbekistan, and the Central African Republic. 12 other countries also carried out or condoned serious violations of religious freedom. The commission said Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, Bahrain, Cuba, Egypt, India, Indonesia, Iraq, Kazakhstan, Laos, Malaysia, and Turkey. Mandated by the International Religious Freedom Act of 1998, the commission has attempted ever since to focus attention on the importance of the issue. The law created an ambassador at large for religious freedom and aimed to strengthen the United States advocacy on behalf of freedom of religious belief and practice. Despite 2 decades of tireless work to bring an end to religious-based discrimination, violence, and persecution, innumerable believers and non-believers across the globe continued in 2018 to experience manifold suffering due to their beliefs. In Burma, widespread atrocities, widespread human rights abuses. The U.S. should gather evidence. See, let's keep going here. Saudi Arabia talks about the Sunni kingdom here. In predominantly Christian Russia, the state targeted worshipers who do not belong to the Russian Orthodox Church. Jehovah's Witnesses have been banned from worshiping since 2017. Their kingdom halls have been confiscated. Dozens of followers have been arrested and placed under house arrest. Many others have been restricted from traveling and are being investigated. In many other countries highlighted by the report, minority religions were targeted for abuse. China, however, cracked down on all faiths. All faiths. Quote, religious freedom conditions in China trended negative last year, the report stated, as a result of the passage of the country's new regulations on religious affairs. In force since February 1st, 2018, the new restrictions effectively banned unauthorized religious teachings and required religious groups to report any online activity. Although religious freedom is enshrined in China's constitution, the communist government seeks to persecute all faiths and is taking steps to diminish and erase the independent practice of religion, the commission stated. Now, you take that. You take the fact that they've got this policy, this terrible policy on religious freedom, and you combine that with the fact that they also have a very creepy Black Mirror-esque social credit score coming, where you have a social credit score, and your social credit score determines whether you can take the metro or not, whether or not you can do this. And if you hang out with somebody with a bad social credit score, your social credit score goes down. Do you see how this might be difficult for the underground church to function? You talk about counting the cost. It's going to get much worse in communist China. And so the question would be, as Arkansans, again, I disagree with economic development. I'll be the first to tell you that when it comes to how they define economic development as giving away our money to corporations. I don't think it's right. I don't think it's free market at all. But if we're going to do it, why would we want to bring in Chinese embassies disguised as private companies to the state of Arkansas? Arkansas voters ought not close their eyes to who its government has chosen to give its tax dollars. Why would we give our money, businesses, and our future employees to the Chinese? 870-275-9799. Back in just a moment. So, protection of life. Obviously, your wife works at Options on Main and Pregnancy Resource Center. She's the director there. How do you look at the abortion issue today?
Well, I think it's quite evident. You know, I'm staunchly opposed to that. I'm a staunch supporter of the sanctity of life. I tell you, there's nothing more precious, than life. I believe life begins at conception. I believe that we are woven in the womb by God Himself, and I believe everyone has a destiny on their life given by God that they need to fulfill. And those people that would take that life, are trying to thwart that destiny that God has upon their life. People are of value, especially the rights of the unborn. And I'm telling you, my wife has their banquet coming up this next week, and I hope it is a phenomenal success. Because
in Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Determined to drain the swamp in Little Rock, it's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, coming up at 7:33, we'll be talking with the Young America Foundation spokesperson, Spencer Brown. He has worked to bring conservative speakers to universities across the country, like Ben Shapiro at UC Berkeley. Didn't they, burn the place down, or they trash the place at Berkeley? They got pretty close. Like, we disagree with your ideas. We can't compete with your ideas. We're just going to. It's the equivalent of like, it's like if infrastructure just was like, all right, let's just slit our wrists and be done with it. We can't compete with Ben Shapiro.
You know what
let's just give up.
When he was at Berkeley, you know what they did to the room? The room that he was giving his speech in has 2 floors to it.
Yeah.
So there's an upper balcony. They closed off the upper balcony for fear of people ripping the chairs out of the floor and throwing them into the crowd below.
Oh, wow.
Apparently that was a fear that members of Antifa were going to do this.
Well, and you never know with these leftists, who knows? They might get so triggered that they literally just start throwing themselves off of the balcony. And the reason I say that is because you can't take some of these people are protesting. Like there was some lady up in Britain, over in Britain. Did you see this? Well, you shouldn't see it. You don't Google this. She was upset. I can't believe this. She was upset about climate change. Okay, so there are people over in Britain that are upset about climate change. She's upset about climate change. So you know what her protest was, Joe? You wouldn't guess it in a million years. She decided to glue her breasts to Fleet Street. So she went topless and then glued her breasts to the pavement. And you know what that did? Well, now everyone's like, oh, no, call the ambulance. They had all these people holding up towels and stuff while they're trying to now pry this woman's breasts off of the asphalt.
And she's probably screaming because, like, don't get me out.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, it was just, I was like, okay, well, did that do what you thought it was going to do? Huh? Anyway, so we're talking with Spencer Brown from the Young America's Foundation about all kinds of stuff. So there are 4 truths that are going to get you kicked off a college campus. A quote from Ben Shapiro: "To pretend that a man is a woman if he believes he is a woman is objectively untrue. You'll get kicked off a college campus if you say that. Feminism has sucked all the joy out of femininity." That's Andrew Clavin. Life is the most fundamental right. None of the other rights listed in the Bill of Rights actually exist without the first right to life. Ali Stuckey. And then for Brian Brenberg, free markets fundamentally run on service, not to make everyone's outcomes equal. Well, those should be controversial statements, but on today's college campus, it's no wonder you have comedians who traditionally lean left. And there's a lot of leftist comedians that I grew up watching that I disagree with politically, but their comedy was actually funny. It was humor, They don't. If they can't even go on college campuses now, it's no wonder that basic statements of truth like that are abhorrent to them. The left is anti-free speech, therefore they're anti-humor, they're anti-comedy, they're anti-political debate, and it's very dangerous in a society. And they've gone after our institutions that, much like the mainstream media claims to be objective, colleges and universities claim to be places where this is where we're supposed to learn and debate and be free thinkers and challenge ourselves and talk about, well, apparently not so much. Apparently they're frauds too, because they're safe spaces and there are things that you can't talk about. And you had Wake Forest University having meetings. We talked to this on Friday. They're having inclusivity meetings on inclusivity, where white people are not allowed to attend the meetings on inclusivity. And in their world, they see nothing wrong with that. I mean, how do these people recover? What's going to happen? The only positive thing that I see is that the Generation Z people, the Generation Z, which is the ones behind the millennials, they're revolting. Right now, freedom of speech is becoming a counterculture concept, which just tells you how far that. I mean, we used to, Americans, whether you're on the right or the left, whatever, you're like, hey, I'm an American. I have the right to be left alone, and I can say whatever I want to say. That used to just be ingrained in us. I think that's resurging in the Generation Z folks. They've got these apps that no one's even heard of, or that, normal people like myself, I'm not normal, but you know what I mean. Like, I'm old. I'm 34 years old. I'm an old man. I feel like it anyway. I went for a walk yesterday, and I was pushing a stroller. And, the 30-pound toddler in a stroller, that's up a bunch of hills. It's a lot more work than I thought it was. Confession's good for the soul, bad for the athletic reputation. We're going to take a break and be back in a moment.
I tell you, those women down there, and it sort of chokes me up a bit, because when you think about what they do down there, you know, and they protect those, the lives of the unborn, they see that baby on that ultrasound, and that baby, they know that if they go and that mother chooses, you know, to abort that baby will feel pain, and that baby will feel anguish. But not only just the pain and the anguish, but just the destiny that God himself has on that life is thwarted at that point. And so it's those ladies down there and the people that support Options on Main, I just give them a hand. And they are on the forefront of this battle of life and death. You know, every time someone walks in that room, it is a battle between life and death, good and evil. And I'm glad to say that a lot of times they come back, she comes home and she goes, we had an abortion-minded person that chose life. You know, but sometimes it happens the opposite, and it just devastates those ladies there.
Yeah, I know. It's personal because it is life and death. We're talking with Bobby Long, city councilman, announcing that he is running for District 53 state representative, which is a seat currently held by State Representative Dan Sullivan, who is going to be challenging John Cooper for the Senate side of things. And I believe that, actually, I think Dan Sullivan has a big announcement coming up on April the 23rd at a place called Harmony Gardens. So stay tuned for those details. Bobby, on a lighter note, let's end things on a lighter note, because I know something about Bobby. Bobby is a kickboxer, so I mean he could just he could kick me to death right here if he didn't like my questions. That's why it's been such a positive interview for him.
It has.
So tell me about, how did you get involved in kickboxing? What is that about?
Okay, well, several years ago, I was 260-something pounds. I was on the verge of having a heart attack, and I knew that I remember waking up one morning with just my heart pounding out of my chest. I looked at my wife and said, you know what, if I don't do something, I'm going to leave my wife a widow and my sons without a father. And I couldn't do that. So I started going to this gym and learned how to kickbox, and lost tons of weight. And now I'm healthy, you know, I'm happy. And I wanted to learn what happened in my body, so I become a personal trainer. That's one of the things I try to do each year is I'll find something that I've never done before, and I'll try to do it, you know.
Wow.
One time it was making soap. My sons thought I was going to blow the barn up, you know. Come running into his mother and said, I think Dad's going to blow the barn up, you know, but I did not. One time it was building a chicken coop. I have 5 chickens. You know, that's my limit in the city. That's what I have.
Nice.
I have a garden, a greenhouse that I built. I'm not a construction, but I do it. And one of my last projects was I wanted to learn to paint like Bob Ross. So over this past summer, I took up painting, you know.
Bringing you your daily dose of truth. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, folks, welcome back to the show. Telephone number 870-275-9799. If you want to contribute to the program, we'd love to hear from you. Also, sound off Facebook.com/Conduit News. So, folks, the Young America's Foundation. This is interesting because I have this YouTube video here. Back on April 11th, Michael Knowles is attacked on stage while speaking at the University of Missouri, Kansas City. During this attack, we played a very short clip of this video for you the first hour. He thought it was like a milk-like substance. Then I think they later figured out, Joe, you were telling me they figured out it was some sort of bleach shot out of water again. I mean, this is from the intolerant left. So Young America's Foundation and their website, you know, the conservative movement starts here. They're exactly right. And yet they go to these college campuses. They literally are going into the line of fire, trying to debate, trying to compete in the arena of ideas. And the left just wants to shut them down. They just want to shut them down because they don't want to actually have a civil debate. And that is very, very alarming. It's discouraging. Here to talk more about this is Young America Foundation spokesman Spencer Brown. Now, Spencer, can I say spokesman or should I say spokesperson?
That's actually something that I've been criticized for by the left previously, because I do identify as a spokesman, but they've informed me that that's not very inclusive or tolerant and assumes a gender binary and all that other crazy stuff. But here, I'm a spokesman.
Here, you're spokesman. Okay, good. So I see this article over at townhall.com. It's written by you, posted on April 17th. 4 truths that will probably get you banned from a college campus in 2019. Now, this is something that you're intimately familiar with because you've been there and helped get people like Ben Shapiro and others to college campuses to speak, right?
Yeah, so Young America's Foundation, one of our main sort of outlets for reaching young people and inspiring them with conservative ideas is our nationwide campus lecture program. So as you mentioned, we take people like, Ben Shapiro, Michael Knowles, Katie Pavlich, these leading conservatives from different sort of spheres of the movement, and bring their ideas to college campuses, because what we found is that obviously in the classroom these days, the ideas are either completely ignored, or if they are mentioned, basically just demonized and, portrayed as some sort of radical, fringe way of thinking. And so we work to make sure that students have a chance to hear these ideas. And as you mentioned, we've seen a lot of crazy opposition, and I think what we saw happen in Knowles at UMKC was sort of a new level of intolerance, where it was literally an assault on a conservative just because he dared to get up and say that men are not women.
That's incredible. And that's actually your first point in this town hall piece, a quote from Ben Shapiro. To pretend that a man is a woman if he believes he is a woman is objectively untrue. That is a true statement. And yet if you say it on a college campus, people lose their minds.
Well, that's the really scary part about what the left has done with higher education today, is they've kind of gotten rid of this idea of objective truth, or, really any truth, and instead everyone has replaced it with their version of the truth, or my truth, as they often say. And so that just creates a huge problem when you're supposed to be learning things. How can you ever not get 100% on a quiz if you get an answer wrong? Because can't you just argue now that your truth is different than what the truth is? And it's just absurd that now, basic biological, it's in your genes. The truth about who a person is now completely irrelevant depending on how someone feels. And we see a lot, their feelings are what are most important on college campuses now, and they set up safe spaces when a conservative shows up in case their feelings get hurt. And it's just sort of a really, sort of a corruption of the purpose of higher education, which is to discuss, maybe difficult or new or different ideas that you haven't heard. And so instead, a quote like that will quite literally get you banned from a campus, or in Michael Knowles' case, assaulted.
Talk about that UC Berkeley situation. Back in 2017, there was a lawsuit. Whatever happened with that, and why did you guys sue?
Yeah, that was a very crazy situation. So we at Young America's Foundation have been working with the Berkeley College Republicans for years to bring in conservative speakers to that otherwise, loony leftist campus. And what we found is 3 times in a row, when we tried to bring in 3 different speakers to that campus, administrators were pointing to this unwritten policy known as their high-profile speaker policy, and using that to say that we were not allowed to have somebody speak on the main part of campus, they weren't allowed to speak after 3 p.m., and they weren't allowed to advertise that there was an event taking place. And so all of a sudden we realized this has happened 3 times in a row, this policy, we can't find it anywhere, and it's only being applied to conservatives. So then we went ahead and filed that federal lawsuit out there in the Ninth Circuit, and that battle dragged on for close to 2 years, but in the end the judge allowed our case to move forward under the First and 14th Amendment claims that we had made that Berkeley was violating those amendment rights of our students out there. And we ultimately were able to win that case when Berkeley realized that they were not going to be able to continue to act like this, and so they settled with us. They paid us $70,000 in legal fees, and most importantly, they had to fundamentally transform their policies to take this sort of unfettered discretion by administrators and get rid of it, so that way everybody on that campus knows exactly what to expect when they're bringing a speaker in. And since then, we've seen close to a dozen conservatives now speak on that campus without any problem.
That's fantastic. Yeah. And that really kind of goes to generally, like, you need equal protection in administrative rules under the law, at a university. That would also really help people, these kids, when they get out into life and what to expect from the government as well. I mean, it's really sad. I was just comparing some of these colleges and these professors to, the liberal media. They claim to be objective. They're not. And colleges are supposed to be places where you have a free, open exchange of ideas, and you can that's not the case anymore either. So it's very, very frustrating. I know here in your article, again at Town Hall, according to a Fox News report, a student at Indiana University of Pennsylvania was kicked out of a Christianity class for doing what?
Well, excuse me. This situation continues to sort of devolve on college campuses. If you look at what is now expected of students and what is accepted on behalf of students, if you're a liberal student, you can do anything you want, including assault conservative speakers. But if you dare to, ask a sincere question or seek the truth in a class, you're going to be completely kicked out of the classroom. And it's just a double standard that I think you mentioned there when you were talking about the liberal media. But if you look at these schools, they always claim to be, Berkeley claimed to be the home of the free speech movement. They all claim to focus on free speech and First Amendment rights. But really, if you look at how it goes, it's only, those rights are only extended to you if you're a liberal or a leftist. But when you're a conservative, you're basically checking all your rights at the door and walking into more or less a lion's den to try and, do your best, knowing, though, that you're probably going to be persecuted or even kicked out of a class just because you ask honest questions.
Yeah, in this case, according to the Fox News report, a student was kicked out of class, a Christianity class, for daring to state, quote, the official view of biologists is that there are only two genders. The professor couldn't handle hearing the truth and kicked the student out of class, and then referred him to the university's Academic Integrity Board. Now, number two is a quote by Andrew Clavin, quote, feminism has sucked all the joy out of femininity. Wow. I love Mr. Clavin, but he's right.
He's absolutely right, and I think he frequently addresses this topic. But also Christina Hoff Summers is somebody we have on campuses all the time. She was just at Skidmore College and UC Santa Barbara and UC Santa Cruz, and what we see is people react to her and start calling her a misogynist, even though she's basically a world-renowned feminist who is just trying to kind of take back feminism from the radical left, who have basically demanded that women just punish men now rather than seek equality. And she's been shouted down before, and it's just ridiculous that she brings the facts in and says, the wage gap is not something that the left makes it out to be, that modern feminism is actually bad for men and boys because it's just seeking to punish them. And, again, all she does is cite facts. She brings in the printed out, copies of police reports and the economic data and everything else, and that still isn't enough because the left, again, their feelings always trump the facts.
The one of the things that I know they couldn't stand is when you have this skewed statistic, phony statistic about the rape culture on college campuses, and so here's somebody, Miss Summers, that claims that's a feminist and is now saying, "Hang on, wait a second, this statistic's wrong," and they really can't handle that.
Well, they can't, and I mean, all it takes is somebody actually looking at the number that the left is citing in this and realize that it's clearly not based in reality or based in truth. Because the statistic that they often cite would make American college campuses more dangerous than walking through like a war-torn nation in the Middle East as far as safety for women goes. And obviously that's not the case. No parent is sending their kid off to college with a clear conscience if that were really the case. And so again, it's just, I think it goes back to the way that the left has sort of corrupted education as a whole, where these are the kind of things that they're teaching them that are just not true. And so you see it reflected again then how they treat conservative speakers, and I think we see it to a certain extent then now moving on into the mainstream culture, which I think is the really scary part and why a lot of more Americans are taking note of what's going on college campuses now, because they're seeing ridiculous behavior from young adults in the workplace, and they're trying to figure out where did they learn this behavior, and it turns out they learned it all in their classroom.
We're talking with Spencer Brown. He's a spokesman. He identifies as a spokesman for Young America's Foundation. They are instrumental in getting all these conservative speakers to college campuses and in front of young people. Another great young conservative is Allie Stuckey, quoted in this piece, "Life is the most fundamental right. None of the other rights listed in the Bill of Rights actually exist without the first right to life." Talk about this idea of being pro-life and taking that message, Spencer, and to young people who are not pro-life, they're pro-abortion.
Well, exactly. They're being at this point basically pro-death at any stage. If you look kind of what I was talking about at the last point about how the mainstream culture is reflecting what's happening on college campuses. If you look, maybe 5 or 10 years ago, the left's talking point on abortion was really that line. They want abortion to be safe, legal, and rare. And what we've seen is that has completely been thrown out the window. And now if you look at the proposals that were put forward and even passed, in New York or Virginia, where they want, abortion up to and at the point of birth at this point, and for any reason, not just for the health of the mother or whatever other reason they may come up with. That's something that we've seen on college campuses for years that's now broken out into mainstream, national politics. And so if you look at being pro-life on a college campus and suggesting, there are other options, abortion is not the answer, there are plenty of other options that don't involve killing a child. Those people who are pushing those pro-life ideas are completely demonized and maligned as being, misogynist, being oppressive, trying to keep women down. And often we see, pro-life clubs on these campuses being either shut down or defunded just because the radical left will protest so strongly.
Yeah, and again, this is and what's frustrating to me, and I think a lot of Americans, and again is alarming, Spencer, is that you guys are just trying to have the conversation in part of this lecture series, and you're trying to be silenced. They're spraying you with bleach. They're doing all these things that just are, they're not civil. And it's like basic concepts. Again, the last point here, Brian Brinberg, free markets fundamentally run on service, not to make everyone's outcome equal. So this flies in the face of maybe some of their Marxist professors that say, hey, look, on a chalkboard, okay, when you don't take the human condition or the depravity and, on a chalkboard, everything works out great. If we just are all forced to put all of our money into one big pot and divide it up equally, then society would be great and we would have equality of outcome. To challenge that is somehow hate speech now on some college campuses.
Absolutely it is, and I'm glad you mentioned Marxism there, because if you look at what these schools are teaching in the classroom, they're actually glorifying Marx now and suggesting that his ideas are somehow relevant to the 21st century, and we ought to give Marxism another try, as if it hasn't, been responsible for the death of millions of people around the world in history. But yeah, this quote from Brian Bremberg, who's from the King's College, he speaks at a lot of YAPS conferences and on a couple other campuses, basically just refutes the two main ideas that are being pushed on college campuses, and that is one, that free markets are somehow oppressive and tools of, racist patriarchy, and then also that, they are completely, they just are a horrible plague, basically, to society. And in fact, free markets run on service. If you're not serving somebody in the free market, your business is not going to work and you're not going to get anywhere. And then also the idea that outcome of equality is different from outcome of opportunity is something that's just completely mixed up in college campuses and in classrooms today, because they take the idea of the American dream, or take the line like life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and say, oh, the government needs to provide the same thing for everyone, to guarantee a basic income, to guarantee health care, to guarantee education, when really that's just a complete misreading of that whole principle and that idea. And obviously it's that you have the equality of opportunity here in the United States, and what you do with that is up to you. But of course that doesn't work with the left's message that you're always a victim, you're being oppressed, you'll never get ahead, and you have no personal responsibility. And so they find that statement to be very problematic.
So we're talking with Spencer Brown, Young America Foundation spokesman. Last question, because I know you got to run, but on the whole Marxism thing, I know, college professors have been promoting Marxism on a chalkboard for a long time, but, at this point, some of those policies historically, or all of them, you can see what they end up doing to a country. They lead to, mass deaths of the people. And so a lot of those positions are not really defendable at this point. So it's kind of do you believe in the new Marxism? You mentioned victim and oppressor, where, that's what you got to have. But instead of dividing people up on, worker versus, the super wealthy or whatever, it's now, let's just divide up into a lot, many more groups. So men, women, you've got rich versus poor, obviously, but now you've got, black versus white, gay versus straight. And if you can just get, even more groups and point out the differences, do you see that as the new Marxism?
Well, I think it's definitely problematic, that subdivision you're talking about. And if you ever look at how the left does that, they'll never run out of divisions to make. So you listed sort of those top level, the most cited, I guess I would say, of those differentiations. But now if you look, everybody, because the left is this victim culture, within those groups then, they're going to continue to divide until you've just got all these individuals who feel more oppressed than their other individuals who they were previously in a group with. And I think it's really dangerous. But, going back to just the idea of, they can't really defend Marxism as it was, because if you do, read actual history or look at the facts or look at what that system brings, you can't do it. But that doesn't stop schools from continuing to push those ideas and the buzzwords, especially of socialism. Today, when you have people like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez or Bernie Sanders pushing those ideas, but most transparently, you see that none of these schools are offering study abroad trips to Venezuela. And so clearly they're just trying to completely brainwash this generation, but the idea of socialism is good, hoping that that sticks enough without having facts behind it. And I think, we're seeing in the popularity of AOC or Bernie Sanders or people like this who are pushing these ideas that it's worked. And so that's a really scary thing in higher education, and why we're working so hard to bring the other side and bring these free market conservative principles into these schools, and hope that students will hear them and realize maybe they've been told something that's not true or not given the full picture. And, we do see students responding well to it. So if there's anything to be optimistic about, and everything we talked about was kind of a downer as far as the state of higher education, but students do respond well to these ideas. We see conservatives, coming out of the woodwork on these campuses when we have events. And we see them being bold advocates for our ideas, and so that's the good thing.
That is a good thing, and that's the work you are doing, and certainly want to point that out. You guys are packing venues and of people that are applauding and they want to hear this message, and it's really now the idea of freedom of speech, freedom of thought, freedom of expression is now the counterculture in many ways, and so that's extremely encouraging, especially the generation behind the millennials as well. I feel like that's growing. Spencer Brown, Young America Foundation spokesman, really appreciate it. Folks, you can support their cause if you want and go to yaf.org. Spencer, it's been a pleasure to meet you, sir. I'd love to do it again sometime.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
All righty. Folks, we're going to take a break. It is, 7:51, and the number to call and text, 870-275-9799. This is Conduit News Radio. Back in just a moment.
Russellville-based firearms manufacturer Omega are making clones of the most notable German firearms in the world. These delayed rotor-lock firearms have been and are currently used by law enforcement and military worldwide. At Omega, they manufacture their guns right here in Arkansas and produce the best reproduction in the marketplace that comes with a complete 5-year warranty. At Omega, they take firearm manufacturing seriously and offer discounts to active and retired law enforcement. Whether you're using Omega firearms to defend the public, defend your family, or for target practice, Omega has your back. For pricing, go to omega-guns.com. That's omega-guns.com. Are you a conservative-minded young person and want to let the world know about it? Are you tired of rolling your eyes as your professor regurgitates progressive, PC, neo-Marxist nonsense? Then you should interview on Conduit News Radio's Young Conservative segment and tell us about why you believe the way you do. Tell us how you came to be a conservative and what are your views on government. Now, if you're worried that your neo-Marxist professor may also be a right-wing talk radio listening masochist, then names can be changed to protect the innocent. It's the Conduit News Radio Conservative Future segment. To be interviewed, call 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Wow.
Now, I'm not the Bob Ross yet.
Right.
But I'm working on it.
You're trying to do new things. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to do things.
That's great. I respect
expanding
that.
my mind.
But you still
like
kickbox,
that.
right?
Oh yeah. In my gym, I've got 5 bags, and I go at it.
That's
sure do.
That's incredible.
52 years old, And
and you're a specimen.
I will challenge. I'm not going to say I'm going to challenge every 20-year-old because my son is a weightlifter, and I remember the day that he outlifted me. I could not move my arms. We had a curling competition.
Okay.
And he just flat out just smoked me.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, I don't mess with him anymore.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll have to talk more about this cake. I may need to come see the operation.
Come on.
That's fantastic. Well, Bobby Log, we appreciate it, sir. There we go. Well, the interview's over. Bye, guys. We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a moment.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is building a liberty machine. Find out more at conduitnews.com.
The New York Times. What do they call the New York Times? What do they call her? The Gray Lady. The Gray Lady's a little bit of a problem because turns out the Gray Lady's a raging anti-Semite. This headline over here. The New York Times suspends all future syndicated cartoons amid anti-Semitism crisis inside the newspaper. This is from Breitbart. Matthew Boyle. Look at this. You see this photo here? It was a cartoon that was published. Benjamin Netanyahu is a dog with a leash on his neck with Star of David, leading a blind Trump who's got a yarmulke on. You know, what's interesting is if you scroll down in this article, you will find a piece of Nazi propaganda where they did the exact same thing to Winston Churchill. Oh, no, that's the newest one that's now got all of the cartoons banned. Benjamin Netanyahu blind coming down off of Mount Sinai with a tablet with the Star of David on it. They're saying that that's anti-Semitic as well. And a selfie. Is that a selfie stick? It looks like yeah, it does. Yeah. Yeah, it is a selfie stick. Okay. So they're saying that's anti-Semitic. And scroll down here. Let's actually get to the Nazi propaganda from the... Yeah, there we go. Pick one. The Jew leads Winston Churchill, Nazi Germany, 1940. Okay? Now, you compare that to what they're doing with the Jew leading Donald Trump, which is Benjamin Netanyahu. Yeah, I say we want to avoid that, don't we? Don't we think this is kind of a big deal? Yeah, and likening Jews to pets, yeah. The New York Times has suspended the publication of all future syndicated political cartoons in its international print edition. The Daily Beast's Lloyd Grove spoke with Murphy in the wake of the newspaper's publication of a second controversial cartoon that drew critical condemnation from the Jewish community after a first cartoon, which the paper now admits was anti-Semitic, was retracted and then subsequently apologized for over the weekend. The newspaper is in a full internal crisis on this matter, as executives and editors have launched a full-scale internal investigation into what happened, who is responsible, and what procedural and structural changes need to take place so the Times doesn't publish any more anti-Semitic content. Is that really something that requires an internal matter? Oh my gosh, what do we do? How do we determine what's anti-Semitic and what's not anti? I think it's just pretty easy. Just don't post anti-Semitic content. That'd be pretty... Can you imagine if they were doing this like, yeah, we're sorry that we're generally racist. We're trying to figure out a policy to where we won't be racist anymore. I'm not really sure how to do that. Okay. And I mean, in fairness, what's racist today is constantly evolving, right? It all started last Thursday when the Times published a cartoon on the opinion page of its international print edition showing Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu as a dog with a Star of David around his collar on a leash, leading U.S. President Donald Trump, depicted as a blind man wearing a skull cap. Under immense criticism, the Times on Saturday retracted the cartoon and issued an editor's note, but then they came out with this other cartoon recently that has everybody up, in an uproar. So anyway, check it out for yourself. Who knew? Isn't it interesting when you see the left's when the left does the very thing that they claim the right is guilty of all the time? But there's never as big of a hubbub, right? There's not wall-to-wall coverage on MSNBC about the New York Times. But if this was Breitbart that published a piece like this, or this was the Daily Caller or the Daily Wire or something like that, oh, yeah, then they would start talking about those journalists on the right. Those journalists on the right. But, you know, they're just so racist. They're so anti-Semitic. Wall-to-wall coverage. You see nothing. Folks, go to conduitnews.com for stories on Arkansas and this broadcast.
The news and